Well, let's give attention to the Middle East, where after launching a wave of airstrikes that the Hamas-run health ministry says killed more than 430 people in 2 days, Israel has extended its ground operations in Gaza. The Israeli Defense Forces say troops have been moved in up to the Netzarim corridor, which divides the north and south of the Gaza Strip. The renewed assault on Gaza marks the end of the fragile ceasefire deal that had been in place since January. Now, the IDF says it has begun in quote targeted ground activities to create what it called a partial buffer between northern and southern Gaza. And in a bid to justify the attack on Gaza, where more than 400 people have been reported dead, the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria says the majority of the casualties were members of Hamas. Ambassador Michael Fuhrman says the attack carried out by Israel on Tuesday became necessary to ensure the release of the remaining 59 Israeli taken hostage by Hamas. TVC News Foreign Affairs correspondent Moya Thomas reports.
After about 6 weeks of ceasefire and relative peace in Gaza, Israel has renewed its assault by returning to war. The government of Israel has threatened that the war this time around is with full force.
Israel will go as far as we need to go in order to release our hostages and ensure that Hamas can never carry out what they did on October the 7th ever again. They're planning for the next attack, and we have intelligence assessments that say Hamas was planning another attack on Israeli communities, was planning further attacks on Israeli soldiers. And so we had no choice, we had no option other than to do what we've done in order to protect our population. And so Israel will do what we need to do to release our civilians, to release our hostages, and to make sure that Hamas can never do what they did on October the 7th ever again.
Israel insists the reason for the renewed war is Hamas's breach of the ceasefire agreement and refusal of Hamas to agree to the proposal by the U.S. government, while Hamas also accuses Israel of not fulfilling the agreement reached on the 19th of January, one of which is allowing aid into Gaza.
Over 25,000 trucks of aid were coming in, food and medicine and other things. There is enough food in Gaza to last between 5 and 6 months from when the end of the first phase of the agreement. 5 to 6 months of food is there. What we have seen, though, is that Hamas have been stealing the aid that's been coming in. They have been using that aid, they have been abusing that aid, and they are redirecting it for military purposes. And international law is very, very clear. You do not have to allow aid to come in when it is being reutilized, reused for military purposes, which Hamas is doing. So again, Hamas is abusing Palestinian civilians and Palestinian citizens within the Gaza Strip by taking the food that is meant for them, by taking the aid that is meant for them, and they are holding it and saying to Palestinians, we will only give it to you if you do the following things or if you pay us extortionate prices. They are abusing that, and we won't allow that to continue.
Ambassador Freeman describes President Trump's plans of rebuilding Gaza as a fresh idea worth considering, as it is different from all other plans to have peace in the Gaza Strip that has not worked. Moyo Thomas, TVC News, Abuja.
For more on the troubled ceasefire, global affairs analyst Dr. Bola Adedoro joins me now from the UK for further discussion on this. Dr. Adedoro, we've seen Israel kill more than 17 pre-dawn attacks, and we're hearing the U.S. saying that Hamas is solely to blame for the resumption of these hostilities that we've seen. Although it wasn't declared, but these attacks by Israel means the truce is no longer on. What do you make of Israel's non-adherence to ceasefire deals despite months of consultations?
You're absolutely correct. The renewal of hostilities effectively marks the end of the fragile ceasefire. It's clear now that that Israel is not willing to move into the second phase of the ceasefire deal. But I think it's I listened to the ambassador speaking. I think it's very disingenuous of him to say that Hamas is responsible for the collapse of the ceasefire deal. Yes, in some respects, Hamas has been delaying the negotiations, but it is more importantly the domestic politics within Israel that is responsible for the collapse of this deal. And by that, I mean that the government at the moment, the coalition government headed by Netanyahu, is at the risk of collapsing by the end of March if it's not able to secure necessary votes to pass the finance budget. And the far-right groups that were propping up the government left in January because of the fact that, because of the ceasefire deal that was negotiated. If you remember, Ita Ben-Gvir left that coalition government, but has returned now with the renewal of the hostilities. So domestic politics is at the center of why this ceasefire deal has collapsed. And Netanyahu needs this war to continue for his government to hold. He also needs this war to continue to stave off the corruption charges that has been put to him. And the fact that as the war continues, as the renewal of hostilities continues, he's able to push off his testimony on these corruption charges. So the reality is that Palestinians are being sacrificed on the altar of domestic politics in Israel.
And talking about politics, I mean, there have been concerns about the role of the U.S. Saying that Israel has breached the ceasefire deal and there is no level of, pushback. It's clear that Israel is restarting its war in Gaza. But some say, the U.S. had a brief beforehand of the attack, which could have been averted due to the fact that there were consultations ahead. As you were still giving Israel a sort of green light on these attacks?
The Donald Trump administration is not willing to hold Israel accountable. In fact, the truth is that under the Joe Biden administration, it was unwilling to hold Israel accountable. So one should not be surprised that Donald Trump, who has suggested one of the most ridiculous ideas for Gaza reconstruction I've ever heard, or any sensible person has ever heard, would not hold Israel accountable. In fact, what they would want would be for Gaza to be completely leveled, Gaza to be completely destroyed, and that it should be uninhabitable, so that his plan to turn Gaza into a sort of a Riviera of the Middle East is achieved. Steve Witkoff, who is the sort of the lead negotiator for the U.S., has been threatening Hamas that this deal was going to collapse, or that there will be a renewal of hostilities if Hamas do not release hostages. But negotiations are negotiations. I agree that Hamas is taking its time to agree to a new ceasefire deal. But at the center of this, let us also not forget, are innocent civilians. They are children, women, and disabled and old people who are being killed. And if there is any conscience, any humanity in us, it is that we should give that process as much time as possible, and also allow those who have been taken hostage to come back home. So all of these things need to figure into the minds of the decision makers in Israel, and not just pure power politics and how to keep hold of their seats in government.
Right. I mean, the fate of the civilians in this process is one that has been of major concern. Thank you for talking to us, Dr. Adediran. We're hoping for an end to this hostility and perhaps an end to the war in itself. Now that we're seeing that there is probably no hope for the ceasefire deal. Well, thank you for talking to us at this time.
Thank you, Olamide.